Welcome to the Multiply Your Success podcast, where each week we help growth-minded entrepreneurs and franchise leaders take the next step in their expansion journey. I'm your host, Tom Dufour, CEO of Big Sky Franchise Team. And as we open today, I'm wondering if you've thought about buying an existing business. And if you have, did you have a plan on what you might look to do if you were to make that purchase? Well, our guest today is Richard Parker, and he shares with us some insights into buying an existing business and some best practices to help you make the best decision for your business. Now, Richard has personally purchased 13 of his own companies plus one co-investment with purchase prices ranging from $50,000 to over $200 million. He was a partner with Ray Dalio and with the Dalio family office in an investment firm that was set up for Richard to mentor one of Ray's sons in the art of buying businesses. Richard has over 200 published articles to his credit on buying businesses and has been featured in Forbes, the New York Times, TheStreet.com, Entrepreneur Magazine, Inc. magazine, and many others. You're going to love my interview with Richard, so let's go ahead and jump right into it.
Richard Parker. My title is Managing Director and CEO and Chief Cook and Bottle Washer. And the company is Diomo Corporation, DIOMO, which is the abbreviation for doing it on my own.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. And one of the reasons we're excited to have you on the program was just to talk about buying, selling businesses, really this industry expertise you have. So I'd like to maybe take a step back and have you just share a little background and your involvement in business acquisitions and selling and this broad cross-section you're involved with here.
Okay, perfect. So I've been in the world of buying and selling businesses for 34 years. It's hard to believe sometimes. Started out when I was 29 years old. I was working for a company grew up in Canada and was doing very well, paid very well. I made a terrible mistake in the stock market, blew a ton of money, which I really couldn't afford to do, and was in a situation where I recognized that I had to put myself in a position where I didn't have any limit on my income upside because I would never be able to get out of this hole. I blew $60,000, which at that point in time, and even today, is a lot of money, and realized that the only way I was going to get out of that mess and recover was getting into my own business, where again, I wouldn't have any limit to my upside. And I started a business first initially, but for a very short period of time, because after a few months, I realized, and it wasn't revolutionary, but as far as where I wanted to go with this business, realized that, if I could start tacking on some additional businesses to my then existing business, it would be a great way to grow quickly. Organic growth is wonderful, but, and sexy, but, it doesn't get you there as quickly as through acquisition. And so I started buying some smaller companies. My first company I purchased with $30,000. It fit perfectly with what I was doing. I was a manufacturer's rep and doing a little bit of importing. And that got the bug in me and started buying a lot of companies over the next several years. I've since purchased 14 companies, including one co-investment and a wide range of deal sizes from, again, $50,000 to $208 million. And that brought me to different avenues. I did a lot of work related to buy-side consulting and helping people realize their dreams of business ownership and develop a bunch of programs. And that was pretty interesting, and still do sell-side representation for businesses looking to exit, and do a lot of consulting work with owners that are looking to package up their business, get it ready for sale, because most small businesses are nowhere near ready to sell. And so I've been in all sides, and I was in the investment business for 4 years in a small private equity company. So I've done all facets of it. And, I don't think any of those are a diversion. It's all within the space or, the universe of buying and selling businesses.
Thank you for that. And listening to you talk through that, one of the things I always find interesting, and this comes up a lot in our line of work, we help companies franchise their business. And what I find interesting is that a lot of times when someone comes to us, they say, well, I'm thinking about selling my business or franchising my business. And they seem like polar opposites, but really someone's trying to get out of the day-to-day operation of their business is really where I think they're hinting at. So as I think about someone looking to sell their business, maybe what are some common mistakes or pitfalls or things you might see sellers make as they start to enter into this, maybe I'm going to sell my business mode?
It's a great question, because there are a lot of common issues that business owners have, regardless of the type of business. The overarching theme to the problems or the challenges or the issues is the lack of preparation. I mean, that's clearly the issue. The time to get ready to sell it is not when you're ready to sell it. It's thinking about that well in advance. So I always have a few bumper stickers, if you will, related to business owners, and tell them the first thing is you want to run your business like you have to sell it. And that means not taking your focus away from growing your business. It's just the opposite, is thinking about all the things that you need to put in place and having, for example, flawless books and records, because that in a smaller business is a single biggest thing that causes deals to not get done. So run it like you have to sell it, with processes, systems, procedures, etc. The second thing is what keeps you up at night. And I always ask business owners to think about this in a way of what bothers you about the business, what keeps you up at night. Because understand, someone coming in to buy your business, or someone with whom, in the example that you gave, that you may want to franchise your business, well, any problems in your business are going to be magnified to the power of at least 10 in the eyes of a buyer who has no intimate knowledge about your business. So, for example, you may have some customer concentration issues, which you've learned to live with or mitigate or manage. But to the eyes of someone who doesn't know that business, that's a big issue. So whatever keeps you up at night is going to really keep a buyer up at night. So think about how you solve for that and reduce the risk associated with those things that come up at night. For example, in commercial cleaning businesses, recruiting, training, and retaining staff is a pervasive problem for every company in that industry. So solve for it. How are you going to do this, manage it in a better way? Because again, in the eyes of a buyer, not only is it going to make your business better day to day, but when the time comes to sell, that problem is already solved. And the third part is, the third piece, or the third bumper sticker, is what happens if you get hit with a Pepsi truck? Like, what's going to happen to the business? Are there people in place? Are there processes, procedures, systems, second-tier management to carry on with that business, as opposed to your family saying, oh my God, what do we do now? And so getting those things in place, they all sort of drop down from preparation and running it like you have to sell it. But those are the really three big things, and they're very common. I mean, regardless of business size, and I deal with, business owners of the full spectrum, they're very common problems, and you want to address those early.
One of the things I find interesting that you have an expertise in is how you grow a business through acquisition, but it's a very different thought process to go through. So I'd love for you to share some maybe strategies or best practices that you see.
Well, I think if you own a business, you want to grow through acquisition. The first thing to understand, it's a lot easier than people think it is. It's not just reserved for big companies. There's many more small businesses around the world than there are large businesses. And so doing this is definitely possible. You want to do this in a good way. And the two things that you really need to think about is, are you going to buy a company that is strategic, in other words, more competitive, or is it ancillary, meaning it's something that you could add on to what you currently do? And, early on in my career, this is it's not a statement from a genius by any means, but it was very apparent to me early on that to grow my business is the easiest way is to find more stuff that I could sell to my existing customers, because I already had a relationship with them, whether the consumers or B2B businesses. And so when you look at acquisitions, you have to look at it through that same lens to say, should I be considering buying competitors where it's the same product that I could just add on, get rid of the competitor? Then I have some opportunity to have some more efficiencies, get rid of them. They remove from the equation, potentially even raise prices because I have less competition. Or is it ancillary where I can add on? So using an example of one that I was recently helping somebody, they were in property management. And so they managed a bunch of townhomes for a large company. And then they started looking and said, well, maybe I should get into the landscaping business. And they got into the landscaping business. And as they were looking at it and saying, maybe they'll buy some additional landscaping companies, they were in the Northeast. They said, well, what about a snow removal company? So there was another service that you can add to your existing, suite of services that you could offer your customer base. So you have to look at it two ways. Now, of course, when you're talking about dealing with a competitor, you have to tread lightly, because you want to make sure you're not divulging information that can come back and hurt you if the deal doesn't go through. So you really want to get to know one another and really make sure that the fit, culture, product, etc., is going to mesh well post-acquisition.
That makes a lot of sense. And as I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe I want to take this acquisition strategy or explore it more. Now I'm a business buyer. So we talked about some of these mistakes business sellers make, but maybe someone's listening in and most of the folks are growth-minded entrepreneurs. They're expanding. What are some common mistakes you see business buyers make?
On an individual basis, so individuals looking to acquire a business, the single biggest mistake that they make is not identifying the type of business that is right for them. They tend to look at a business and say, well, is it a good business? Is it the right business? Well, it may be a good business, but it doesn't mean it's right for the individual, because whatever skill set, your greatest skill set has to marry perfectly with whatever drives the revenue and profits of any business you consider purchasing. Because a good business run by the wrong person is going to go south in a hurry. It's not like buying an apartment building where if you overpay, time will ultimately heal every real estate error. If you buy a business and you're a wrong person to run it, you're going out of business in a hurry. So that's one thing, is the marriage of your greatest skill set to a business that needs that specific skill to drive the revenue and profits. Second part, and again, more from an individual basis, is knowledge. Most people who buy businesses never bought a business before. So you're not going to just go online, look at businesses for sale, jump into the mix and think you can count on business brokers to help you. They don't represent you. They represent the seller or the deal. And I do, transactions. So if I'm saying anything disparaging, it's against my own trade, but understand they're not on your side, right? And so getting a knowledge of understanding what's involved, how you value a business, key questions to ask the sellers, how you investigate the business, the industry, the competition, going through the negotiation process, preparing for due diligence, arranging financing, all these things, forming your knowledge base is really, really important. And I suggest to people to align yourself with someone who's already done it. I mean, you could have the greatest education from the best business school anywhere in the world, but that does not give you the knowledge to acquire a business. It's just giving you an education. It hasn't given you the knowledge. And I think the third piece where I see, and again, more so for individuals versus a business owner looking to grow through acquisition, is understand that no business is perfect. Every business has warts, has blemishes, and you're buying an existing business for all of the benefits that it has of an operating business, has revenue, has profits, has employees, its systems, etc. But it's not going to be perfect. There's certain blemishes. Now, you don't want to make any catastrophic mistakes, but again, understanding that the perfect business is the one that doesn't exist. And so being able to mitigate your risk and solve for any what look like big issues, that's very different than saying this is not perfect. You could address what's not perfect after, but you're not going to, the perfect business just doesn't exist.
I will be speaking for myself. When I've been looking into opportunities, I have this perfect fantasy vision in my mind of what I expect it to be. And then, wait a minute, when I start looking, I said, well, it doesn't check all these perfect boxes that I have in my mind as we're going through this. So I understand exactly what you're saying there. One thing I'd like for you to talk a little bit about here, you have a program called How to Buy a Good Business at a Great Price. The title's perfect. It summarizes probably what most people who'd be looking for an acquisition would be looking to find: a great business, a good business at a great price. So talk through that.
Sure, and I'm happy to. And please, I don't want this to come across as a sales pitch for the program that we offer. One of the things that's really important for people to understand is identify this as a good business. I don't believe in buying great businesses. I don't believe in startups, and I don't believe in buying distressed business. I look at this and I call them the 3 Gs on the hill. 3 Gs like the letter G. At the beginning, whether it's a startup or a new business, it's at the bottom of the hill. G stands for garbage, because you have no idea what's going to come of it. And at the top of the hill, you have these great businesses. And the only thing that could really happen with a great business is go south. I mean, that's the history of a business. I like businesses right in the middle. Good businesses, rock solid, stable, where you can come in and apply your skill set and ultimately grow the business and build it, to greatness and then sell it. And so to me, a good business, a rock solid business, an unsexy business is what I like. That I like a solid platform, because I believe with a good business, you can get the keys on Monday and take a paycheck on Friday. That's the goal. Okay. And a great price is understanding that price has a lot of pieces to it. It's not just the price you pay, it's what you get, and it's the deal terms. So great price is, oftentimes, I've had deals where I've said, look, I'm happy to pay your price, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you just take my terms. And so the terms where you can have, a high component of seller financing, what have you. The other part to it related to the program is I'm not a no money down guy. Like, that's nonsense. Those businesses, distressed business or buying business, you see all this stuff on social media. They're going to teach you how to buy a business, throwing off, hundreds of thousands of dollars of profit for no money down and close deals in 30 days. That's nonsense. It doesn't happen in the real world. I deal, in practical terms and achievable results through a methodology that has proven itself repeatedly for decades. I mean, we have over 100,000 clients, and they've achieved incredible success. But again, it's practical. And so that's why we start off by saying, I believe in a good business. A great price has some drop downs to it, and understand, don't get misled by nonsense about how this can be done. It's, it takes money, it takes a down payment. You want a good, solid business. And again, I just like to breathe oxygen from this planet and give people guidance that they're going to be able to realize and put to work.
Listening to you speak reminds me of a business I bought many years ago that was one of those businesses. It was close to, like you described, almost no money down. And it was because it was a garbage business. And I inherited the garbage and a bad lease and terms, and lost a whole lot of money over the course, and just let it ride out until the lease was over, and then shut the business down. And so that's just sometimes how it goes. So I understand full well and good what you're describing there. I'd love for you to share, how can people find out more about you, what you're doing, if they say, boy, Richard, this sounds great, I'd love to learn a little bit more?
I built a website. It's called richardparker.com. And there's tons of free resources on there, hundreds of articles, the free articles, all of the podcasts that I've been on. And I appreciate you having me. And I do these all the time to try to help people and get the word out. So all the podcasts that I've been on and all the videos that I've made over the years are all posted there, so people can get tremendous education, tremendous knowledge and value. And it's not a sales pitch. I mean, all that information is there for them to really determine if this is something that they want to do and start to get familiar. And of course, we offer our program on there, which is a drop down in their courses where they can acquire the course. We make it very affordable for people. And the one thing we do is, it's all the resources related to valuation spreadsheets and case studies and legal agreements. And we give people a lifetime guarantee. Like, I don't want, thank goodness I've done very well in my career. I never thought that this course would turn into a business. I mean, I did this to just get what I believe was good knowledge out there to as many people as possible. Never dreamed it would turn into, having 100,000 of these copies sold. So they can find it on there as well. But there's on richardparker.com. I mean, you can get lost with the, try to present it as a real knowledge library for aspiring business owners.
Well, Richard, this is a great time in the show where we make a transition. We ask every guest the same 4 questions before they go. And the first question we ask is, have you had a miss or 2 on your journey and something you learned from it?
If it was only 2, I'd be happy. Many more than that. I think going back to what we first talked about when I made that bonehead move in the stock market and blew $60,000 at 29 years old, that was something that I really had to bounce back from. But, there's a lot of lessons learned in that. One of them was, I didn't feel like I had any options. So it's very easy to make, when you have no options, it's very easy to make decisions. And also not getting involved in areas where you don't have expertise, or at least going out and learning from someone who has the expertise to bounce ideas on, as opposed to doing stupid things without a knowledge base. So I think that would probably one of the, that would be right at the top. And again, I wish there were only 2 of them along the way, and many more. And they're all good learning experiences.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about a make or 2, a highlight you'd like to share.
So on the business side, I think one of the early acquisitions that I made was a company that I couldn't afford to acquire. It was in the retail service business. And I was doing it in a very small way, and I convinced someone who was in this business in a different part of Canada to throw their lot in with me. I had a vision for this business that we could really take this business national. There was no companies of that nature in Canada, and I couldn't afford to buy their business at what they were asking for, but convinced them to throw in their lot and had this good vision. We ultimately built that business up to, $4.5 million, which again, in Canada, you multiply by 10 and 200 employees. So it'd be like the American equivalent of 2,000 employees and $45 million of revenue. And this was 30 years ago. And that was a real gratifying experience, not only the acquisition, but the partners that were brought on board and how we expanded this in a good way, because collectively we looked and said, there's a real opportunity here, but it comes in with real good execution. So that was something that I was really, really proud about. I mean, and certainly on the personal side, it's easy. My kids, my family. I mean, that's the easy one.
Well, let's talk about a multiplier that you've used to grow yourself personally, professionally, any of the businesses you've owned along the way.
There's 2 come to mind. Certainly the never-ending thirst for knowledge. I didn't go to university, and I was a young business owner. So at the beginning, I always let my ego and insecurity get in the way. And that caused me to not hire people that were bigger, better, faster, and smarter than me because I felt probably intimidated. And that was a young age. And once I got over that hump and putting that ego and insecurity aside and recognizing that because I was a young business owner, I was going to always be at a disadvantage unless I made learning become something that was the top of my pyramid, and having this intellectual curiosity, not because I'm an intellectual, but just having this curiosity to learn and devour information and really force myself to, align myself with people that were much smarter than me. I mean, I just, for a long time when I was much younger, I always wanted to be the smartest guy in the room. And as things evolve, you realize, now if I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm in the wrong room. So, the learning piece was really a game changer for me. And then going back a few years when I started doing work in partnership with the Dalio family office and Ray Dalio and mentoring his eldest son, Devin, who was a cherished friend of mine and partner. And Ray got me into meditation. And that was that's been had an enormous impact on my life, business and personal, like this ability to process things at a much better speed, slower speed, not faster speed, being able to, when faced with something or a situation or a decision, to be able to look at it from a much more, to digest it and look at it probably from a more composed perspective, I guess is the way I would describe it.
Richard, the final question we ask every guest is, what does success mean to you?
Doing what I want when I want to do it. And a statement said that, success is having what you want, but happiness is wanting what you have, right? And so for me, it's the ability to having some freedom and being able to do things, to not be chained to business, and spend the time with my family and do what I want to do without being reckless. I'm saying, doing what I want to do when I want to do it, and having the ability, financial and time-wise, to be able to do it.
Excellent. Well, as we bring this to a close, Richard, is there anything you were hoping to share or get across that you haven't had a chance to yet?
One thing that I've been telling people for decades is, I'm somewhat of a poster boy for entrepreneurship. Didn't go to university. I come from a very lower middle class background. Didn't start off with a lot of money. This is very doable. It's more doable today than it was years ago because of information that's out there. You just got to be careful because there's a lot of bad information and misinformation. But this is very doable. And for anybody who has, whether you own a business, you want to grow the business, whether you own a business, you want to franchise the business, whether you're an individual and you want to buy a business, this is doable. And the very least, you owe it to yourself to learn about it and decide whether or not it's something that you want to do. You don't want to just sit on the sidelines. Get involved, learn what's involved, align yourself with mentors or people that are going to help you along the way. But at the very least, learn about it and then decide.
Richard, thank you so much for a fantastic interview. And let's go ahead and get into today's 3 key takeaways. So takeaway number 1 is when Richard talked about growing through acquisition, and for you to make a key decision, are you looking to buy something that is complementary to your current business offerings? Is it similar to where maybe you're able to sell new products or services to an existing customer base? Or are you purchasing a competitor? And he said, having the clarity on what you're looking to purchase as you're going into this really helps in the buying process. Takeaway number 2 is that as a business buyer, there are a few things that he gives for some quick pieces of advice. Number 1, he said, where he sees people make mistakes is that they don't identify the right business for their business. It might be a good business on paper, but not the right one for them. The second one, he said, was knowledge. Most people don't have a lot of knowledge on buying a business, so get that knowledge. Number 3 to remember is that business brokers are not on your side. He said that they are looking to broker the transaction or the sale. So he said, make sure you're educated. And number 4 on that list was just to understand that no business is perfect. I thought that was a great little takeaway. Takeaway number 3 is when he described the 3 G's for the types of business. He said business 1 is a garbage business, number 2 is a good business, and number 3 is a great business. And he said he likes to buy good business at a great price. And I thought that was a good way to look at it, and that when he makes an offer, he always makes sure that he puts money down on the purchase. And now it's time for today's win-win. So today's win-win is to understand that there's no perfect business. And I thought that was a great takeaway and a great win-win for today. So if you're thinking about buying a business, selling your business, doing anything related to that, I think Richard's point is well taken. There's no such thing as a perfect business. So remember that as you're going into that process. It's the right business or the right buyer. Every buyer, every business, every situation has its own unique attributes to it. So I think going in with that mindset will be helpful. And so that's the episode today, folks. Please make sure you subscribe to the podcast and give us a review. And remember, if you or anyone you know might be ready to franchise their business or take their franchise company to the next level, please connect with us at bigskyfranchiseteam.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to having you back next week.